Just told the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, that he will learn no lessons as a result of Brexit. Convicted murderer Darren Jackson is on the run after absconding from Sudbury Prison in Derbyshire. And MPs say David Cameron's intervention in Libya in 2011 was founded on inaccurate intelligence, and it's led to an increase in terrorism in North Africa. Well, Jeremy Corbyn and Owen Smith will face each other in the final Labour leadership hustings live on Sky News tonight. Fair to say it's been a pretty bitter campaign, marred by internal strife, arguments about entryism, court cases, divisions in the party. The debate could prove decisive, hundreds of thousands of votes still to be cast in the contest. But who will win this battle for Labour and secure its political direction ultimately? In Corbyn versus Smith, who will triumph? I'm joined now by Chief Leader Writer at The Observer and former Senior Policy Advisor for Ed Miliband, Sonia Sodha, and Aaron Bastani, co-founder of Novara Media, an independent news and comment website. Joining too, if you'd like to tweet me at Colin Brazier Sky. We'll try and get those questions in if we can. Good morning to both of you. Sonia, if I can start with you, what can Owen Smith conceivably say and do tonight that can turn the momentum, no pun intended, turn the momentum of this campaign in a different direction? He's way behind in the polls, say some. What can he do?
Well, I think if you look at some of the debates that we've already had, there's a couple of things that have really stood out about them. First, they've been very kind of ill-tempered. So you've had, supporters in the audience of one or the other candidates who aren't really prepared to give the other candidate a hearing. Secondly, it's been very focused on kind of, issues that really matter to Labour members rather than the country at large. So I would say, if I were Owen Smith, I would be thinking about how can I pitch myself in this debate? It's going to be on Sky News. It will be watched not just by Labour members, but by voters across the country. How can I sort of make this debate about issues that voters really care about, not just things that are obsessing members of the Labour Party at the moment?
Aaron, does that all sound a faithful picture that's been told there by Sonia? Has it just been a bit of an echo chamber for Labour Party members?
Well, the selectorate is Labour Party members, affiliate members, registered supporters. So you could say there have been limits in the debate, but fundamentally they've been appealing to the people who matter, those who get to choose, those who get to cast a vote. I think Owen Smith's messaging in terms of appealing to the selectorate on the one hand and the country on the other is kind of mixed. So he's saying, I think, very incorrect, bad things around migration, around prevent, which is clearly not played well with the selectorate, the people that will be voting on this leadership race. He's trying to appeal to the country by saying those things, and then he's saying things which really anger the country, which may appeal to the selectorate. For instance, the second referendum on EU membership. So I think it's kind of mixed, and I think he's made some really big mistakes. They won't be overcome just in one night's hustings, even on Sky.
Yeah, Sonia, on the point about Europe, Sonia, that he's this very pro-Europe, let's have a think about a second referendum pitch that Owen Smith has made, quite radical in its own way. Has it scored for him?
It is quite radical, but I think, he's got a problem there, which is that we've just had a referendum. There is a mandate, from the country. They voted out. The issue is it's not very clear exactly what that mandate means, apart from leaving the European Union. What sort of deal do we, does the country get? And the country hasn't really had to say on that. So I've got some sympathy with people who say, that's something that Parliament needs to sign up on. There are elected representatives. But I think making such a strong pitch on the basis of kind of not leaving the European Union just after a referendum vote is very tricky for Owen Smith.
There's always a problem. Sorry, Aaron, go on.
No,
I was going to say, there is always a problem, isn't there, if you are challenging the incumbent, that you lay yourself open to the charge of disloyalty, because, by its very nature, you are challenging the status quo, you are challenging the orthodoxy, you are criticising the current leadership, and that's always a difficult role to play.
Absolutely, but I think if you look at kind of what's happened over the last year, so it's been a year since Jeremy Corbyn became leader of the Labour Party, he lost the support of almost 80% of his parliamentary party just after the European referendum vote. He's doing really badly in the polls, so the gap between Labour and the Conservatives now, Labour is trailing the Conservatives by the largest amount they've ever trailed since polls began 1 year after a new leader was elected. So I think it's quite difficult to sort of land the loyalty sort of, accusation on someone like Owen Smith, because I think actually, you would expect, I can't think of any other British political party leader in modern history who would lose 80% of the support of their parliamentary party and then wouldn't have the humility to say, hey, I've lost the support of the people, I need to lead him, maybe there's an issue, maybe I need to stand aside. So I just don't think that loyalty argument, you know, has much sway given the context, given how badly Labour's doing in the polls under Corbyn's leadership, given that he just can't command the support of his party. How badly they're doing at the polls, Aaron Bastani, only, I think it was yesterday, Owen Smith said if the country went to the polls now, Labour would be decimated.
Well, Owen Smith was very happy to talk down Labour's chances. I think about a month ago, he said on the present trajectory, they'd be in the low 20s by now. He was almost egging it on. Incidentally, one of the most popular prime ministers in post-war history, who was it? John Major, straight after the Gulf War, in 1991-92. Within 18 months, he needed the votes of unionist MPs in Parliament to pass legislation. The Tories did not have a majority within a year of the 92 general election. So politics is a funny old game. Things change very quickly. And Theresa May's been clear, we probably won't have a general election until 2020. All of this was based on two assumptions. The first, that Boris Johnson would be the Tory leader and therefore Prime Minister. The second, that we would have a general election very soon. I think the PLP has been proved incorrect on both counts, and they're going to pay for it.
Sonia, will this, when you look back maybe a couple of years hence, will Labour Party members look back on this whole exercise as a cathartic one, a useful one? Will some people say, well, look, you know, Corbyn was always going to win because there wasn't a sufficient candidate of sufficient standing to go against him at that time? Or will people look back and just say that was the moment the wheels came off?
I mean, I think that's a very optimistic view, that people might look back and see this as a sort of cathartic moment for the Labour Party. I think if you look at the way that this leadership contest has developed, as you said in your introduction, Colin, it's been incredibly bitter, incredibly toxic. Things have ended up in court. You've got John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, accusing, you know, all of the media of being biased against Jeremy Corbyn. This doesn't feel like a good moment from the Labour Party. In fact, it feels like a really critical moment, a moment where, you know, we could actually see something happen that would make the party much more likely to split at some point over the next kind of 2 or 3 years. So I can't see that. I can't see anyone looking back and seeing this as a cathartic moment, unfortunately.
Aaron, just pitching forward to the 24th of September results. That, you know, the prospects for a healing process. Are there no prospects for a healing process? Is unity impossible here on in?
I mean, there has to be. And many of the criticisms that have been aimed at Jeremy Corbyn haven't been entirely misplaced. Even his supporters, many of his supporters will concede that. I certainly would. But there has to be. And what worried me the most was the tone of Owen Smith's interview yesterday with Laura Kuenssberg when he said that he would potentially run again. He wasn't really dampening down on the rhetoric. Some of the things he said in the last few weeks in regard to Jeremy Corbyn, so he didn't really vote to remain in the EU. You know, the kind of language, the tone that you would expect to sort of be diminishing by now, especially when, you know, I think Betfair has the guy at 23-1 to actually win. It seems unproductive. Now is the time for reconciliation, whoever wins. And I think what has to be forthcoming from the victor immediately after they win is a plan about how to bring the party together. And I think that seems to be, ironically, more forthcoming from Jeremy Corbyn right now than it does from Owen Smith.
Yeah, it's interesting, Sonia, it's hard to have a plan when maybe the person you've just vanquished, as Aaron was saying, you know, there was Owen Smith saying he might run again even if he loses. It's hard to have a plan if the person you've defeated isn't really defeated or it doesn't admit defeat. They say, oh, I might actually think about having a go maybe this next year, year after that, the door stays open. I mean, that is a recipe for continued infighting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about. I don't think Owen Smith could conceivably run again if he loses this time against Jeremy Corbyn. I think if Labour moderates wanted to run another candidate, it would have to be somebody different. But I think it is very difficult, and I think it comes back to this fundamental sort of difference between the membership, the party membership, and the Parliamentary Labour Party. It's very clear that Jeremy Corbyn does not have the support of a really wide selection of colleagues across the Parliamentary Labour Party. We're not just talking about people from a particular wing of the party, we're talking about people who wanted to give him a chance, who decided to serve in his shadow cabinet and then resigned. And we've had some real stories about incompetence during the first year. So it's just very difficult to see how this situation can resolve itself. It's not good enough for Jeremy Corbyn to say to the Parliamentary Labour Party, well, I'm sorry, but this is what the members want, and you're just going to have to get behind me. There's got to be some other sort of compromise.
Is there really a compromise? I just wonder, Aaron, I mean, given that there is that gap that Sonia identifies between the PLP and the membership, given the fact you've got the Boundary Commission with these boundary changes coming along, some people suggesting that might be an opportunity for Jeremy Corbyn to deselect some of his enemies, a bit of a purge. So far from healing, could be some purging.
Well, the deselections, reselections are very, very difficult to procedurally do, whoever wants to do them. And if that is to happen, it will happen at the local level. Personally, I can foresee several cases where that may happen, but it's very, very difficult to foresee, procedurally very difficult. Either side, when they're informed, will say as much. It's more about rhetoric than reality. In terms of the PLP, I think too many MPs over the last 12 months have not been part of a solution process, they've been part of a problem process. Rather than saying, there's a problem here, let's deal with it, let's overcome it, they're saying, here's a problem and we need to eliminate the cause, which is Jeremy Corbyn. And clearly, when he has such a mandate from the membership, that isn't going to go down very well with the membership. I have to also disagree slightly with Sonia. I'd agree that, look, 70-80% of the PLP, the Parliamentary Labour Party, had no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. That's difficult. Okay? I mean, that's unprecedented, quite frankly. However, there is a significant chunk of the Parliamentary Labour Party, let's say 20 MPs, who tried to undermine Brown, didn't like him. They tried to undermine Ed Miliband, they didn't like him. And those same people now are doing the same thing with Jeremy Corbyn. And whoever is the leader now, next year, 5 years, that's no way to run a successful organisation. You can't have a subgroup of people continually set on undermining, discrediting the leader of that organisation. Wouldn't be acceptable in the private sector. I don't think it should be acceptable in party politics.
I don't think there's ever been a time in Parliament when there wasn't a small cabal of backbenchers who didn't agree with a sitting Prime Minister. Aaron Bastani and Sonia Sodha, we're going to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks a lot. You can see that leadership debate. It's tonight on Sky News at 9 o'clock. And before that, special programme, The Battle for Labour, which starts at 8 o'clock. There's been a scathing report into David Cameron's intervention in Libya in 2011.